Hello and welcome to Got Clutter, Get Organized, the conversation. I am so excited because I have Michelle Thornhill of Legacy and Hope. And we're going to talk about, last week was Valentine's Day, but we're really going to talk about just how to navigate not only Valentine's Day, but life when maybe someone special is no longer here. So, Michelle, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here.
For sure. It's my absolute pleasure, Janet, and I love seeing you. So thank you for having me.
And I love seeing you too, Michelle. But before we get started into the conversation, what made you decide to be a grief counselor? And may I just say, an absolute, like the best grief counselor. Well, what made you decide to do that?
Thank you. I'm actually an advanced certified grief specialist, and specializing in grief was important to me after working in the field of end of life and funeral service. I was noticing that people were holding on to pain, and they were holding on to pain more than they held on to love, right? So when they were doing that, I was thinking, okay, well, without going overboard, it's very possible to grieve people with more love than with pain, you know, not turning them into a saint, but understanding that it's two sides of the same coin. When we love people and we lose them, we feel pain. So, for example, when a person thinks of someone that they lost due to the end of a relationship, and that could be death or divorce or breakup, people tend to focus really on those negative events that cause the end of the relationship, right? And they think about when the person died, how they died, or they think about the negative events that caused the end of the relationship, like what somebody said or what somebody did. And I often think of saying it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, right? And so, with those same individuals with whom we had the relationship and it ended, there were also some good things that happened during the relationship. And when I'm in a grief support session, I ask my clients to tell me something about their loved one, and they immediately go to something pleasant. And I think they do that. They like start out with the good stuff first because it really adds credibility to their plight, and it like justifies their pain for um, losing the individual, and rightfully so because they actually loved that person. So, leaning on the good memories instead of the painful ones was a message that I really wanted to get across to people as they experience their grief journey. And I really wanted them to know that their life is their own and it's not a dress rehearsal. So, spending time loving someone and loving that experience that you had and showing gratitude for the good times instead of so much focusing on the bad times is really one of the reasons why I wanted to help people through their grief experience.
And you really touched on my next question is like, what do we do sometimes to just really, I guess, I don't know if it's prolonging the grief or is it just prolonging the pain? In regards to, we just celebrated Valentine's Day, and of course, that can bring on a whole, variety of feelings. But what are some things that people tend to just continue to do to kind of stay in that place?
Oh, wow, that's good. Well, sometimes people think that um, the outward expression of pain due to the loss of a relationship really shows how invested you were in that relationship. So, look at how much I'm suffering right now because I've lost this individual. And we know that mourning is something that people do outwardly, right? Grieving a loss is something that someone does inwardly. But mourning is more of an expression of the pain that you're experiencing. So some people may dress in black for a year. Some people may um, create shrines. Of course, there are healthy expressions of that loss too, through creating legacy projects and tributes and remembrance services. But it all has to be done in moderation. in order to be a healthy expression of loss. So when it comes to signs of sadness resulting from loss, and understanding that loss is that change in a normal pattern of behavior, um, really people focusing just on being able to say, I've experienced this loss. It very well can be traumatizing or devastating. And it's really important to be able to focus on what is positive and true about coming back to a normal way of living.
And it's interesting when you said shrine, I remember I had a conversation with a woman who lost both her parents, and she actually had two shrines in her house. She had one room dedicated to her father and then one room dedicated to her mother. Because we were talking about clutter and letting go. And
Um,
I did not want to say something because I know that is a delicate you know, situation, and you don't want to say something that's going to really make them worse than they already are. But it's interesting how you said a shrine. It's like, wow. And that's what they were. It was like these two spaces in her home dedicated to people who are no longer here. And she just wanted to keep it like that. So it's just interesting that you said that, and it just that brought back that memory to me.
yeah.
Mm. So when somebody is thinking like Michelle, okay, I know I need to move forward. What are some things that you would suggest, for people, whether they're seeing the hearts on the shelves, the flower, whatever, or even something, just how they can kind of move forward?
Oh, to help heal from grief
Yeah, help from
or
grief.
sadness and loss? Well,
Yes.
yeah, one of the most important things is to acknowledge the pain and
Mm-hmm.
accept that grief can trigger, a number of different unexpected emotions. One moment you're happy, one moment you're sad, one moment you're indifferent. And understanding the grieving process is unique to each individual, and don't compare your loss to anyone else's because time doesn't heal wounds. And you are, even though similar to other people, no two grief experiences are going to be the same, right? So you may have had a similar experience than that someone else had, but you're not going to have an identical journey through the process of grief. So when we see people that are hurting and they want to help us or we want to help them, sometimes what they do for us isn't helpful, and sometimes what we do for them isn't helpful, right? So I find the biggest mistake that people make is trying to treat people the way they would like to be treated when we're sad, So it's nice to try to exercise a bit of tolerance when people are trying to help you. And sometimes they will compare their experience to yours the same way you may compare your experience to theirs. And they may try to fix your problem. But it's really important to pace yourself through that process, exercise a bit of tolerance with them, even, but really use this as a learning experience to understand that the same way that you can't fix someone else's pain, they can't fix yours. So, what you can do to help yourself is to be just as kind and caring and thoughtful to yourself as you would a friend, to be able to help yourself through the process. And if you would bring them a nice meal, do that for yourself. And if you would run them a warm bath, do that for yourself. So, supporting yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically is really important. But, I also wanted to circle back to the question that you had about celebrating Valentine's Day. That's this month. And I wanted to focus on some of the signs of that we may need help when we're in a sad space or a space of loss. And some of those signs that we may need help is just that there are signs resulting from a loss of a normal pattern of behavior, right? So if someone is sleeping more, or sleeping less. Or if someone is eating more, eating less, if you're um, not interested in the things that you used to be interested in or that you would typically be interested in, those are signs. And even a change in your energy level. Like, I just don't feel like going out. I just don't feel like making dinner. I don't feel like taking a phone call. Those are telltale signs. But one of the biggest ones is a loss of concentration. So that could be one thing that comes up like immediately, like I'm reading something, but my comprehension just isn't there. I'm not retaining the information that I just read. And then there's something even bigger. Feelings of hopelessness or helplessness are signs that are important, but can be difficult for people to communicate. So, helplessness is the feeling that nothing can be done by anyone to make the situation better. And, that's also thinking that the problem is too big or insurmountable. And then when it comes to helplessness, it's the feeling that they themselves have no power over improving the situation. Like, so when things like this happen, when feelings like these come up, that can be a sign of a deeper issue, such as depression. But I just wanted to mention those things because sometimes we're just on autopilot and we're just trying to do the best we can with what we have, not acknowledging sometimes the depths of a situation.
And thank you for sharing that, Michelle, because I know for me and my situation, one of the things that helped was, of course, just seeking you for counseling during that, but also I think allowing friends to do whatever they felt they were there for me as support, not necessarily doing things that I didn't want them to do. Sometimes they would maybe call people, at that time when I was going through my situation, it was in the midst of COVID. So they would just drop things off, ring my doorbell, and there would be like food outside, things like that. So it was just like little things. And I think sometimes we take for granted just the little things. Or sometimes it's just like, hey, texting me, how are you doing? But also for me, like you said, sometimes you do get in those places. And I think for me, I had to find what worked for me. And for me, it was just putting on sneakers and just walking. I may not have a specific destination in mind, but just walking. So, but those are some of the strategies that you shared with me. So thank you for just like sharing that as well.
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
getting out in nature can make a huge difference.
hmm So, Michelle, as a woman who I know you are involved with a lot of different things, not only in different organizations and professionally, but also just in life and family, how do you stay organized? Because this is a question I ask all my guests.
Yes, I keep a physical date book or a planner. And I'm one of those people that I can't go with the alarm that comes over my phone, even though I have those built in and they go off constantly. I keep a physical date book to help myself stay organized. And staying organized is not something that I just do like the night before or the week before or the year before, but it's built into my lifestyle. So I'm not working constantly. I'm really trying to enjoy my life as best as possible and working when I have to work. And by putting things in order on a regular basis consistently, so if I book an appointment, I put it into my date book. I don't toil over it. It is there. I show up when I'm supposed to show up. And I consult my calendar before I commit to things so that I don't overbook or double book. And that's been really helpful. So I also think about some of those standing tasks and appointments that I have, and I just, go through my date planner and put them in so that they're nice and secure and they're scheduled out and I don't have anything that interferes with that. So that I can avoid some uh-ohs.
Mm. I love that you do things so you don't overbook. I love it, Michelle. I love it. So, how can those listening or watching connect with you?
Well, they can visit my website. That's legacy and that's and hope.com. and they can schedule themselves for a 30-minute complimentary consultation. They can also reach out to me via telephone. And my telephone number is 267-225-2280. And they can also email me at Michelle Thornhill at legacyandhope.com.
And of course, I will have all of Michelle's contact information in the show notes. Michelle, thank you so much for your time. I always enjoy speaking with you and just you sharing, really how we can navigate life a lot better.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Janet.